What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Johners. This is episode 139, and today's a special NXT TakeOver show. Now, we haven't spoken about an NXT TakeOver for a good few months now. I think TakeOver Portland was the last TakeOver that we reviewed. Of course, there was meant to have been one around WrestleMania 36. I think that was TakeOver Tampa. They had the really cool logo, you might remember, with the flag and the skull. That didn't happen. I did have a few matches in the subsequent weeks which were kind of takeover matches, but it didn't really feel the same. But this is a proper NXT takeover. Still not in an arena, not with proper fans. You've still got the developmental people around the outside of the ring. But this is NXT takeover in your house, which is very, very appropriate for everybody's situation with the coronavirus and everybody working from home. So they brought back an old gimmick from the 90s. And my next guest, he's been on the show many times before, and it doesn't need much of an introduction, but John Scott ×2. John Scott from the John Scott podcast. How you doing, my friend? Welcome back.
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Pleased to be back on your show, and even more pleased to be reviewing an NXT takeover. To be fair, I think it was sorely needed in my region, that's for sure. Definitely.
And it was a good show, and I can't wait to get stuck into it and talking about your thoughts on some of the matches, some very good matches as well. And it has this in your house theme this time round, which is very apt because of the current situation that the world's going through. Now, on your podcast recently, probably when you were doing WrestleLine, I know that you had a bit of a look back at some classic in your house matches, didn't you? So when they announced a takeover in your house, did you think that they'd been kind of ripping off your ideas, or maybe listening to your podcast, and maybe it was kind of nice for you that you'd revisited some of the older in your houses?
Yeah, two things sprung to mind there. One was I need some copyright on the podcast just in case. And secondly, I felt like whoever put this together, Triple H, whoever it was, who recommended the idea of in your house, was definitely trying to get in my good books, because the nostalgia side of it is always going to play to me. It's always going to strengthen some of the things. And I thought it was it's a great concept. When I was doing those reviews and we were going back just picking matches from the old In Your House series, the original ones, as I was doing it, I was kind of thinking, like, these, with what's going on now, surely this is the perfect time to have In Your House return under these circumstances, and probably just in your house in general for everything at the moment. Yeah. As far as things are going. But yeah, it was cool that they did it, and I can't wait to talk about it, to be fair.
Yeah, speaking of nostalgia and throwback, you had Todd Pettingill, who was one of the hosts, or one of the key hosts, kind of backstage stuff and interview stuff during the 90s, during the original In Your House, and looking a bit older, but still sounding the same, looking good. So Todd Pettingill was there to kind of introduce the show, this time on an NXT product. But around the Performance Center, they had the old In Your House set, which was quite good, with the windows and the house and everything like that, played into some of the matches later on. Mm-hmm. Going into In Your House, or TakeOver In Your House, before you started watching it, what were some of your thoughts and expectations? Were there certain matches you were looking forward to? Were you a little bit apprehensive about some of the matches? What was kind of striking a chord with you before you sat down and actually watched the show?
If I'm honest, and completely honest with this one, the actual matches, I wasn't particularly excited about any of them, if I'm completely honest with you, going into this. So I kind of went in it with very low expectations, just because I've kind of got used to how the whole look and feel has got, and I was kind of expecting the same. And so I thought, no matter what kind of matches I think that I'll look forward to and I think that are going to be good, 9 times out of 10, when we actually get to see them, because of the current circumstances, because of the current format that they're using, it just doesn't seem to play out the same. However, like you touched on, I love the fact that they had Todd Pettingill do some of the promotion work for this show. That really got me invested a little bit more. And obviously the title definitely, as I said before, would have got me. It was like a book hook, if you will. They certainly grabbed my attention. I'm sure for a lot of fans, I mean, I'm guessing, what is it, 25 years they said since the the first one, I think it is.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's many fans, John, that probably don't even know the whole In Your House concept, because it was in a period of time that even if you did look back, it wasn't something that stood out, because it was sort of in the decline time for WWF back then, around that time between sort of 95 to the end of sort of 97. And it's one of those forgotten goodnesses. But I do recommend any listeners that are listening to your podcast that don't know about it, go and check out, especially their recommended matches. I think they posted that up a couple of days ago to go back and watch. And I'm sure there's something on the network as well. And go and check that out, because I think you'll get more of, if you're not familiar with it, I think you'll kind of connect more with this show and all some of the little spots they had when you go back and see that.
Yeah, and I remember watching WWF back in the day when they first launched the In Your House series, and it was a novel concept, because before In Your House, you just had the main 4, possibly 5 pay-per-views. You had the Royal Rumble, you had WrestleMania, King of the Ring, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series. And what they did was In Your House was designed as a shorter concept pay-per-view. It was cheaper in kind of monetary terms. It only went about a couple of hours as opposed to the standard 3.5 hours that WWE were doing for their regular kind of quarterly pay-per-views, you could say. And it kind of launched what we now know as like the monthly pay-per-view concept. With all of the fringe pay-per-views that we're now familiar with that kind of run between the big 4 or big 5 pay-per-views, the In Your House kind of gave birth to all of that. So although we're talking 25 years ago and it's not quite the same thing now, the In Your House concept was a bit of a marketing genius, you could say, a bit of a brainchild to what we're more familiar with now with monthly pay-per-views. But anyway, I digress. The show go for it,
sorry
John.
To interrupt you. Just before you move on, I was just going to say that In Your House thing, I know that NXT WWE have gone with the title because of the current situation, but what's worth pointing out, which I liked about the whole In Your House concept the first time round, is that every In Your House other than number 1 had its own title, and it would pretty much link in with what was going on at that current time. Whereas what happened after In Your House, that sort of slogan title was lost around 98. They kind of kept to having Unforgiven, No Mercy. You'll hear all those names. Now, of course, we have gimmick matches that are the titles, like Hell in a Cell. And I think, like, sort of to digress from this pay-per-view, but I think in general, the idea of having to sort of, get always ramped up around October time just because it's Hell in a Cell seems a bit forced sometimes. I preferred it when it was worked around what was going on in the angles and the storyline, as opposed to just throwing it on you. So, I kind of enjoyed, and the In Your House thing, like John said, was basically it was a cut price. I think it wasn't as expensive as the others were, and it was a very good concept, and I'd actually appreciate seeing it come back, to be honest with you, more regular.
Yeah, it was a very clever concept, and like you say, the kind of In Your House subtitle kind of gave us a clue to the theme and the feuds that were going on at the time. And
Bad Blood. I'll throw that one out. Bad Blood.
I mean, that was the very first Hell in a Cell, wasn't it? That was amazing. Some really, really fond memories, and I was chuffed to bits when they decided to bring it back as part of this NXT TakeOver concept. Definitely works. But the opening, we saw Code Orange. They were playing kind of the theme to NXT TakeOver In Your House with their underneath tune, and I swear the bass guitarist. I don't know, I had to double check because he looked a bit like, I thought Brock Lesnar had learned to play bass guitar and that he was the one bobbing around behind the singer. That was pretty impressive. He was pretty stacked. He'll probably get signed to an NXT contract, I reckon. But the opening match
wasn't my taste, but I'll probably sound quite old when I say that these days. But it wasn't my taste. But if it was Brock Lesnar, God knows how much they would have paid him.
Yeah, he looked a spitting image of the Beast incarnate there. But the opening match was the advertised 6-woman tag match. Shotzi Blackheart, Tegan Nox, Mia Yim versus Candice LeRae, Raquel Gonzalez, and Dakota Kai. So, this was an okay match to kick things off. You had a bit of a meeting between Tegan Nox and Dakota Kai to reignite their feud that started way back in TakeOver War Games last year. The match soon went to the outside with Shotzi, Tegan, Mia Yim, and Candice all going for dives to the floor. Luckily, Shotzi didn't overshoot her dive like she did last Wednesday. That looked pretty bad. The match saw plenty of shenanigans from the heels. Mia Yim and Candice LeRae, they tumbled to the outside and fought to the back, making the match a 2-on-2. But then there was a nice little bit of teamwork from the two remaining faces. Tegan Nox, she connected with the shiniest of wizards on Dakota Kai. I think it was Dakota Kai, for the impressive win. So this match was fine, nothing wrong with it. It was fast paced as you would expect from a 6-person match, and I thought the right team won. So nice way to kick off the show. What did you think of this one then, John?
I thought the match was good. I thought it was a good. I was glad that they had this just on the main show, that they didn't just bump this off to like the kickoff stuff, which I've said many a times that I'm not a big fan of. So I was glad that they got onto the show, because this is the sort of thing you want to start a show with. This is something that I'm pretty sure Triple H has a hand on this more than anyone, because I think he kind of gets it when it comes to the pacing of a show a lot better than what the top brass do with WWE sometimes. And this is sort of the old, what I would call a traditional, first match on a card. This is kind of what you need. Also, what it showed me was that NXT especially still has a very good depth of female wrestlers to come through. They're going to need a little bit more polish and stuff like that for the WWE style. But I think it's nice to see that there is some good talent on the rise down there. And I'm pretty sure over the next 12 months that we'll see, a couple of those in some high profile spots on NXT over the next 12 months. But yeah, I enjoyed the match. I think this just went under 10 minutes. So it was not too long either, even though it was a multi-person, like there's loads of people involved. And very, very well booked this. So I enjoyed this very much.
Yeah, anybody within those 6 wrestlers that stood out to you? I mean, I see the women's division in NXT going for a bit of a transition phase at the moment. And obviously, Rhea Ripley picked up the title in December. She dropped it at Mania to Charlotte Flair. A lot of people have been a bit against Charlotte being the NXT champion. But besides, that triple threat, which we'll talk about later on, also featuring Io Shirai, you have these 6 women that are kind of just underneath the main event scene, you could say. But is there any one of those 6 you see possibly being elevated in the future to a championship run or maybe a program?
I think so. But my picks on this will probably sound quite obscure, really, for the most. But it's only because I kind of know that system of WWE a little bit. But I think that, I don't know, they all kind of impressed me. I think what was good about this match is they all got sort of good moments to themselves where they could, and sometimes in these early matches, especially early on in your career, and this is only the NXT start match, so I know that everybody at the moment is saying that NXT is on a par with Raw and SmackDown, but there is still that kind of perception that it's still the C. Even though us hardcore fans, we love it probably over the main stuff. I know I certainly do. Yeah. But for me, I think, look, they're just starting out. There's a long ways to go. Yeah. I mean, I think Tegan Nox was pretty decent. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it all depends where they go with stories and what fits what person. But
of course,
I'm just happy that there's a kind of next wave to come through in this female division.
Yeah, totally agree. Let's move on to match number 2 then. Finn Balor versus Damien Priest. So going into this one, I was a little bit confused, and this was probably the match I was least hyped about, mainly because, I don't know, I mean, it was only a few short months ago we had the big kind of resurrection of Finn Balor as the heel, the Prince Finn Balor. Everybody was really, really excited. Everybody was really turned on by his heel gimmick. He had a great match with Johnny Gargano at TakeOver Portland. And then since then, he's been kind of tangled in with Damien Priest playing more of the heel. Finn Balor, you could describe him as maybe a tweener, but kind of getting a bit of a babyface reaction when he's coming out, I suppose, with the people that are there. So I'm a little bit confused as to where Finn Balor is character-wise at the moment, if I'm honest with you. But any thoughts on Finn Balor? Because, like I say, he came back to NXT, did that amazing heel turn on Johnny Gargano, had the great match between him and Johnny at TakeOver Portland, and it seems like they're kind of turning him again to a certain degree to fit this feud with Damien Priest. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm glad you identified this before we talk about the match, because I had this in my notes about Finn Balor that I wanted to ask you some questions, to be fair. But Finn Balor, for me, I mean, just watching him last night come out, and like you say, he's adapting to whatever's going on. Certainly, Damien Priest was much more the aggressor in the match. So I mean, it was obvious he was the heel in that match, no doubt about it, for this night at least. But for me, what I think is kind of almost shocking about Finn Balor is that, I know you picked up on the point when he first made his debut, but I wasn't really even sold then when he went back, because I think the difference between him and, say, Charlotte coming back to NXT is like chalk and cheese. Charlotte looks like the huge superstar, the grandiose, the one that everybody's looking to, whereas Finn Balor almost looks like he's restarting his whole career again. It's like he's bringing no star power into it anymore, and we're almost adopting back to the old Finn Balor who, if you hadn't have seen NXT for about 4 or 5 years, you'd think he's still the same guy, he's still there. It was a real shocking state for me to see it in that way, because I know Finn Balor is totally talented, but I think to see him, the way he come out, the way they were using him, and they have been using him, he doesn't strike me as somebody you look as, this is a big guy coming into NXT, he's coming back. This is almost like one of those ones, John, where we used to see some of the guys from the main roster, like Titus O'Neil, have a little brief fling in NXT to sort of get his stock back up and then get back onto the main roster again. It's almost that to me. It's almost like he's got to prove himself over again. And to be honest with you, I really do think there's a glass ceiling for him, because we've seen, even with a universal title on the guy, and I know that went completely crazy the way it all ended with the injury, but however, he's never got back to that ever again, and I don't think WWE have ever acknowledged him in the same position. Where he would have gone is the question, John, that I'll put to you. If he hadn't have got that injury, do you think Finn Balor, we might be looking at Finn Balor completely different today in all this, and what we're talking about now would have been completely alien?
Yeah, potentially, but knowing the history of WWE, and I've used that word loosely with a grain of salt, because I think, although he would have had a big moment at SummerSlam and probably would have held the title for a few months, looking at the bigger wrestlers and the bigger players around that time, I think he probably would have been a transitional champion. So I think, that was 4 years ago. Looking at where we are now, he may have been a slightly bigger fish on the main roster, dare I say it, but I can't see it being too much of a difference. I mean, I think what they need to do, to be honest with you, they need to do two things. And one of the things they've already kind of dropped the ball on, they should have put the NXT Championship on him when he returned. I think he had a championship opportunity against Adam Cole, and there was some shenanigans with Johnny Gargano getting involved. That led to their match at TakeOver Portland. But I felt that to really capitalise on the momentum that Finn Balor had, coming back as the Prince, as the dark heel, they should have put the championship on him. But that didn't happen. So, because he's missed out on that opportunity, they need to build him again to that point. And I can't see that happening anytime soon. One way to get there might be to reintroduce the Demon. I think we haven't seen the Demon for a long time now. And if they're kind of edging him more towards a tweener, babyface type gimmick, that might be, built into the next feud. And I think, to be honest with you, Finn Balor as Finn Balor, whether he's a heel or face, is a little bit bland in my opinion. So when he did come out as a Demon, he did have a bit more kind of pizzazz, a bit more interest, a bit more intrigue. So that's where I would possibly go in the next 6 months with Finn Balor. But any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, the only thing I'll say about when he won that the title, you'll remember Roman Reigns at the time was in the bad books. I think he'd had the failed drugs test at the time.
Correct.
And that was really helpful for someone like Finn Balor at the time, because he got over and he got that rub, and I think everyone was quite surprised. But, you know, in the times where he came back, what was a shame for me is they just didn't push the button on him being a heel a lot sooner and having something go on with, you know, the Bullet Club with AJ, Luke Gallows. You know, if they'd have put him in that a little bit more, I'm pretty sure, you know, AJ Styles is not exactly the most well-renowned speaker. People didn't think the guy was any good on the mic. People said he could never do it. People even said he couldn't be a heel. Look at the guy now. You know, he's one of the most adapted guys to WWE that I never thought he would be. So I know if someone like AJ Styles, who is an amazing wrestler, by the way, but he was so painted in Indie, Japan, TNA before he got there. But, you know, it's worked for him. For some reason, he is over with Vince as well, and he's much more, advanced. I'm kind of just, I think with Finn Balor, I mean, I just got this feeling that, you know, NXT is going to be his place. I hope that NXT does become bigger. But before we talk about the match, John, I just want to talk about this whole, because I do get a lot from my listeners, and they say, well, it is all equal now. But to me, if it's going to be equal, then we need to start seeing new wrestlers on Raw and SmackDown as well, not just NXT, because otherwise you're only kind of telling us one thing still. I don't know where you sit with that, and I don't know how they get round it, because NXT is the kind of way in. So it's a difficult one. And if you start putting loads of wrestlers in NXT, it just becomes like a third brand, and it loses its identity very quickly. So,
yeah, I totally agree. And I honestly thought, I mean, one wrestler we're going to be talking about during this review is Karrion Cross. And I thought he was kind of ready, set, has the gimmick, the look, Scarlett by his side, ready, set for a Raw or SmackDown. I'm probably going to get lambasted for this, but I think he's probably too big for NXT already. And I think he's probably going to get called up very, very soon, or have the championship put on him very, very soon. But he's a character and a wrestler that possibly could have slotted perfectly into a Raw or SmackDown. So I get what you're saying, and I think they should bring up more new signees onto Raw or SmackDown, and not just NXT, because it does still show it as kind of developmental and possibly third branded in some people's minds. Now, like you say, big fans like me and you will always see it as the better of the three, because we know that you're always going to get better characters, better storylines, better matches. But I agree with what you say as well. They shouldn't put all of the new stars on NXT, and they should. But you know, would you wish somebody to kind of jump straight to either Raw or SmackDown instead of NXT and watch them kind of flounder a little bit, like we've seen so many others? But
what I'd like to see with NXT is I would have liked to have seen it just be a little bit more of an adult show above the other two, and have that indie vibe a little bit more. Because I would have loved to have seen AJ have a little run with NXT. I would love to see Daniel Bryan have a run in that style, like these takeovers. You know that the matches would be totally different under Triple H's watch, but it's very difficult to sell that, I think, with Raw and SmackDown on these giant, you know, with USA and Fox, and obviously they have to appease them. And we know that NXT really, if we're being honest, only got thrown on TV as a kind of way to stop AEW taking up the whole Wednesday night ratings. So, you know, it's one of those things. But but to the match, I enjoyed it, but it was just, I enjoyed the story they told, but for me, it was just a little bit of a, oh God, like just poor old Finn Balor, which I shouldn't be thinking about it like that, but that's how I felt through the match. But I felt that the match itself, like for Damien Priest, I thought this was a great showing. I was surprised that he got, you know, as over in it, and you know, he was the aggressor as well. And to be honest with you, like, you know, it was a decent outing for him. I think this I'm not sold on his character. I'm not like the biggest fan of the whole thing, but I'm kind of enjoying the slow build that they're doing at the moment. And I suppose in WWE's eyes, this is a guy that could potentially be something, but again, I only think of him at the moment as NXT at this time, let's say.
Yeah. Well, I enjoyed the hell out of this match, and I probably, because I went in with slightly lower expectations, but at the time, I thought to myself, well, this is kind of already match of the night for me. I absolutely loved it. I mean, the final few minutes of the match, John, they're pretty awesome. We had an exchange of big moves between the two wrestlers, including the top rope choke slam from Damien Priest. Priest gets sent crashing to the outside onto the ring steps, and that looked like it sucked when he landed. There was no giving them ring steps at all.
That was
It really was. Straight after that, Balor hits not one but two coup de grace back inside the ring for the impressive pinfall victory. And like I say, I came out of this match suitably impressed. Both guys gave this match everything. There was no rest holds. There was no, it was kind of to the max all the way through. Really, really enjoyed this match. It over-delivered in my estimations, to be honest with you. I'm glad that Finn Balor came out of it, because I thought they might see it as another opportunity to put the newer, younger star over, but they went with Finn Balor to keep that momentum going. With in doing that, Damien Priest got over as well, as you said, because it was such a fine outing. When all said and done, did you enjoy this one? What were some of the highlights for you?
Yeah, I had something written down which was impressive violence, I think, through this, and I felt they did a good job of showing that, and then something a little bit different. The whole Razor's Edge was pretty cool into the steel steps, but like I say, it wasn't a lot of give to it either in some of those things. But that's what makes the good art of professional wrestling. This, like you said, this was my favourite match up until this point. I was kind of feeling the worst. I was kind of thinking, like, is this going to be a downhill now when we go into the next part of the show? But this was, I think, like I say, overall, Damien Priest, he comes out of this, I think, better for me, just because I kind of get the feeling he knows where he's going, whereas Finn Balor, I'm so unsure of what is going on because of the very quick fire changes that they're doing, almost fuzzy thinking with the guy. But it was a good match. I enjoyed this a lot.
Yep, same. On to the next match, the first championship match of the night, and it was for the North American Championship. Current champion Keith Lee going into it against Johnny Gargano. So Gargano makes his entrance by exiting the In Your House set and locking the door behind him and putting the key down his trunks. That will no doubt come into play later on. The story going into this match was Keith Lee still struggling with his injured eye and injured wrist after Gargano's attack last week on NXT. As you would expect, Gargano targeted Lee's injured eye and wrist to keep the bigger man down. This match was a little bit scrappy in places, I've got to be honest with you, and I don't know if it was because Lee was selling the injury or maybe the chemistry wasn't quite there, but I felt it was a little bit scrappy in places. However, there was a pretty neat dive through the ropes from Johnny Gargano, turning it into a tornado DDT on the outside. There was a huge pounce from Lee, sending Gargano crashing through the plexiglass and over into the area where the fans stand. Candice LeRae comes out to distract Lee, but she's chased off by Mia Yim. Then, with the referee being distracted, Gargano goes after Keith Lee's other eye with the house key. That we mentioned earlier, before getting a series of close near falls. Keith Lee was able to recover to deliver a spirit bomb and a big bang catastrophe for the eventual 1-2-3 to retain his championship. So this match wasn't my cup of tea. I felt that it got better towards the end. Gargano, in my opinion, is doing too much of this chicken shit heel tactics. Before he was renowned for being an excellent all-round professional wrestler, now he was relying too much on the heel tactics, in my opinion. And that fits in well with his character, I suppose. But I'm glad that Keith Lee retained, but I was expecting a bit more from this match, a bit more wrestling, but it kind of, was a bit more storyline driven. But what were your thoughts on this one, John?
Yeah, I wasn't really looking forward to this because I thought the chemistry just wasn't going to be great anyway. Having Gargano as the heel and someone like Keith Lee, who, I think with Keith Lee, I think the sky could be the limit with this guy.
Totally, yeah.
He's got a good personality. He's got a good attitude. I've met him many a times, and I just think, I don't know if NXT has enough for him at the moment. Certainly this kind of match doesn't really help him Gargano, I don't buy as a heel in general. I don't know what about you, but I just don't think he's got it right at the moment. And, we'll get to it later, but I think Tomasso Ciampa as well, like both those guys are, I suppose, now considered the fabric of NXT current. When you look at the guys that have, had those, crazy rival and feuds, and they were DIY and then they got back together again, all the rest of it. It's one of those things, John, but when they were having that crazy feud between Gargano and Tomasso Ciampa, I actually thought, I know that they were having like match after match after match, and I was sitting there thinking, like, how can they keep booking this? But it got better and better and better. Like, I never come out of one of their matches thinking, I wish they hadn't done that fourth or fifth one or whatever it got up to. I just enjoyed them all. And I was kind of thinking, like, wouldn't it have been, I know it sounds completely ridiculous probably, but we've never really seen it. But they could have done it on NXT because, let's face it, they've got the power to. They've got a huge bloody great roster. Wouldn't it have been something to have them just literally every single time TakeOver turns up? It is them two, just over and over again. And you just, no one's ever really done it in professional wrestling. But I thought those two, they would be the closest that I would say could have pulled it off. They were having very long matches, and believe me, I have seen matches between Seth Rollins and Dolph Ziggler, a million times. I've seen Sheamus and Cesaro a million times. I've seen matches where they have these best of sevens and all this crap. They bore the hell out of me, but these two, they kept me on the edge of my seat, and I never knew what was going to happen next. And I just think it's kind of a shame that they built this grand legacy up, and now we're seeing where it's got to now. And unfortunately for Gargano especially, I'm just thinking he is somebody that I think if he did get pushed up, he would definitely get lost for me, especially in this heel role. And even as a babyface, I just think Sami Zayn again, he only could go so far with that as well. So it's a difficult one at the moment. But Gargano certainly sets, for me, he feels like he's an NXT lifer. Yeah. They need to find a way where they can pay these guys the same amount as they go anywhere else, and then that's going to keep them happy. That's what they need to do. For Keith Lee in this match, though, this was just too long for me. I mean, 20 minutes. I did like the stuff they did with the whole in your house set. I thought that was, pretty cool. Yeah. But bar that, this was not a great match. I mean, this is probably one of the least favourites of the whole night. One thing I do want to say, though, whilst we're talking about this match, John, is that the actual set, the in your house set that we saw at the entranceway, and then the lighting through the matches, that is exactly how I would have wanted WrestleMania to look like. Why on earth they decided to light it all up and just show the space? It was so compact. Even with the grandiose LED lighting, it didn't make much odds to me. I still was taken out of the moments. But I tell you, if you look at this show compared to WrestleMania, this show looks better. 100% better. They focus on the action. They went with the strengths. It's a little bit like Paul Heyman, ECW, play to your strengths. And they did this with this one. And this pay-per-view will stand out. We'll remember this one, whereas all the rest, we're just going to, I think they're all, over the years, when we look back at this era, they're all going to sort of melee into the same thing. I don't know what you think about that, but I thought the lighting here was spot on.
Yeah, totally agree. And I found WrestleMania to be quite distracting with having the whole kind of setting lit up and you could see everything from afar. And here's a bit more focused on kind of what was going on in the ring. The lighting was a lot better. Because, I did pay-per-view most definitely, yeah.
Yeah, because you can't see then. You can't even see the walls. For anybody that doesn't know wrestling, you'd think, they just put the lights down like they normally do for NXT. Because you've got a few fans yelling around anyway. But that, for me, that was so much better, just to focus on in the ring, black it all out. So it kind of, for anybody that didn't know any better, it could have still looked like an arena for the most part. So, yeah, I thought that was very well done. Whoever decided to do that got it right, and I wish they would have done that with the Money in the Banks and WrestleMania especially.
Totally agree. And, having that throwback with the In Your House set, be an ideal opportunity to kind of break out some of the other old sets from the WWE kind of lockup, and, make the most of these pay-per-views by kind of having more throwback themes. And I really, really enjoyed that. But, Johnny Gargano, Keith Lee, the right person won. Wasn't a great match. Yep. I think Johnny Gargano is in that same sort of transitional spot as a Tomasso Ciampa and as a Finn Balor, where, there's, no real character development. They don't feel as hot. Their kind of star seems to have faded quite a bit over the last few weeks. Probably because they're trying to get other people over, new people over. I agree that, the Gargano Ciampa feud was historic. I think it ended about the right time, to be honest with you. We'll probably get another version of their feud somewhere down the line. But Johnny Gargano's heel persona, like yourself and like me, and like many others, isn't quite hitting a chord at the moment, to be honest with you. But then one match that many people were expecting it to be at the end of the card, maybe the main event, was the NXT Championship match, the backlot brawl between Adam Cole, current champion, and the Velveteen Dream. Now, I'm going to talk to you kind of after this match about Adam Cole and, where the future might lay for Adam Cole. But, the setting of this backlot brawl, it was another one of them cinematic matches. We've seen quite a few of them. Some have really worked, some haven't. But the setting of this one appears to be like a movie backlot of sorts. Lots of cars surrounding the ring. Adam Cole arrives in what appears to be like a huge truck. I don't know if it's a monster truck, but the Velveteen Dream turned up in his yellow Lamborghini. The match starts. Both guys are in street clothes. Both men fight in and around the vehicles. Cole does his best to get away from Dream. Cole uses a fire extinguisher. Dream nails Cole with a super kick before slamming him onto the hood or bonnet of a car that was parked by the ring. Dream scales a ladder, and then another car turns up with other members of Undisputed Era getting out. Dream shoves Cole off the ladder, hard onto the windscreen of the car, badly cutting open his right arm. Can't imagine that was planned. It looked pretty painful when it first happened. Roddy Strong and Bobby Fish take control, beating down the Dream, throwing dozens of chairs into the ring. Then Dexter Lou appears from underneath the ring. He beats down Roddy Strong and Bobby Fish, dumping them into the back of the car they arrived in before driving off, bringing the match back to a one-on-one situation once again. The match does go up a notch from here. They're back inside the ring, allowing Cole to hit a low blow, followed by a Panama Sunrise onto the pile of steel chairs for the pinfall victory. Adam Cole, some people might be surprised that he retained. A lot of people were expecting Velveteen Dream to go over because he had one unsuccessful attempt a couple of months back when he first returned, and another loss to his name here. So you could say that Dream kind of talked his way into losing this match. He was kind of flapping his gums a bit too much before getting the low blow and then the Panama Sunrise, which led to Adam Cole retaining. Took advantage of that situation. The match was a match of two halves, in my opinion. The first half didn't really do anything for me when they was battling around the cars and near all of the scenery. And then when Adam Cole got dumped onto the car, cut his arm open, and then the others turned up, I felt that the level of the match turned up a little bit. The end of the match was excellent as far as I was concerned. The Panama Sunrise onto the chairs, a great way to end this match. The right person won, in my opinion. I'd say a match of two halves. But John, I'd love to know your thoughts on this one.
I'll go out and say this much. This was actually my worst match of the night. Again, I'm not a massive fan of keep doing these cinematic style things. Like I thought when they said this, I thought it was just going to be like an old school way of shooting it. But I think WWE now got so fascinated with these cinematic matches that they seem to now want to pounce on at least having one at every pay-per-view that they put out. And it's not that the match itself, like the style, isn't good. I just don't like the way they shoot it, where it's almost like you've got Mauro Ranallo commentating on a TV show as opposed to wrestling in the way they would shoot a wrestling match. And all the angles are nicely placed. We can hear them so well. I was almost expecting when they turned up that it was almost like Grease, the film. and you're going to start seeing the guys just click their fingers in the background. You might as well. It wouldn't surprise me if we go to some sort of like singing match. We'll get that soon one day where we'll have a musical.
That'll be next in the series between the Viking Raiders and the Street Profits, I reckon.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we get that and they throw that one out and everyone accepts it as well. It's just one of those things where I think you don't want to overdo this stuff. I was kind of looking forward to it when I heard some of the stuff they were talking about was going to be in it. But I know that they shot this, they recorded this a lot earlier in the week when they put this together. So obviously they had a lot of time to edit and do all those things. Mauro Ranallo, bless him, the guy's an amazing announcer. I mean, if it wasn't for him, I might have just not bothered. But he kept me going at least. It's a difficult one. It's got to be really hard as an announcer to...
I mean, John, some people might argue that these matches are better without commentary.
Yeah, well, I would definitely say so. I mean, if we learned anything about the Boneyard match, it was that that needs to be its own solo thing. But the thing with the Boneyard match and the Firefly Funhouse, and I know I said this last time on Money in the Bank, is that the characters make sense to have those cinematic type matches. Bray Wyatt does all the Firefly Funhouse stuff, and The Undertaker is The Undertaker. We've always known him to have that, side, these powers, and,
yes.
You take it for what it is. And that's fine. But when you just throw guys like Velveteen Dream and Adam Cole into this type of stuff, and especially the Money in the Bank that we had last time, it does get a little bit hokey for me. It gets a little bit too, or not that this was comedic, but it certainly was along those lines. This is, again, not an opportunity I would have recommended you introduce wrestling to somebody brand new, because they probably would have just said to you, let's just watch a decent film with better action. If they want to watch something like this, let's just put the TV on. And that's where WWE have got to be careful. I hope that it doesn't continue to go on. I really thought, because this is NXT, that they would do it a little bit differently, but they didn't. Overall, again, it was my least favourite. I think I was getting a little bit bored towards the end, if I'm honest. I just think it dragged on a bit too much. Whether, it was only 15 minutes, I think, but for me, it was a little bit going on and on for me. And yeah, look, I'm not going to, some people will love this, I'm sure. But for me, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'm an old school traditionalist. It doesn't really set well for me to see in these all the time. And I kind of feel like these two, with the whole NXT, the way it looked in the ring, they would have got away with it easily. I'm sure this would have been one of the best matches of the night.
Yeah. And I thought the closer they got to the ring last night, the better the match was. The further they got away, it just didn't really kind of hit home with me. But it was all right. And most pleasing for me was the fact that Adam Cole retains. Now, let's talk a bit about Adam Cole while we have the chance, because a lot of people are saying that he's people in the know, dare I say it, are saying that his contract expires in around about August, September of this year. So a few months down the line. A lot of people are saying that there's a lot of interest possibly in getting him signed to AEW. There's rumours that he hasn't actually signed a new contract with NXT yet. I don't know how much of any of this is true. All that we know is that Britt Baker came out on the AEW podcast, or one podcast or another, and she said that they would love to reunite Adam Cole with his ex-Bullet Club members. And, that would probably give Adam Cole an opportunity to be a big star on a big show. As we alluded to earlier, NXT could still be considered, the third brand, and whether it'd actually succeed if he was called up to a Raw or SmackDown is in a lot of people's minds. But do you think that they gave Adam Cole the victory last night to possibly sway him? Where do you see this going?
I don't know. I hope not, because they've tried doing that before. You know what? I listened, cheap plug here for Jim Cornette's podcast, but I listened to his podcast when he had, he's had the Revival on, the formerly known as Revival anyway.
Yeah.
Guys on, and it was a really fascinating listen. I don't know if you've listened to it yet, John. Or
not currently. I will do though.
Well recommended, because they talk about their last days, and it was pretty honest. I was surprised. I know that even though they've been in AEW, they said they still don't have a contract with AEW, believe it or not. It's pretty much a handshake. So they were able, because I was thinking, why would AEW let them go to Jim Cornette, who absolutely rips into AEW every week? And that was quite fascinating as well. But, those two guys, one of the things, and this ties into this whole scenario that's going on at the moment, is they were talking about, when WWE told them they could have their release, then they told them, no, you can't, and who was dealing with that. They put it down to most of their discussions were with Triple H, and they brought up this scenario where they said, look, we'll put the belts on you. You can have the belts. And they both turned around and said, look, it's not about the belts. We want the tag team division to be more than it is. We want to see more for tag team wrestling. And at the time, they said, they'd get the opportunities to beat in guys like the Usos and Roman. And in 2 weeks after, they wouldn't be seen. They wouldn't even have a match on TV. Another scenario they brought up when they said they knew they were it was it. I don't know if you remember that Raw anniversary show, John, where the whole of, I think it was the Clique, done a reunited kind of thing. And they just literally took up both guys of the Revival. And they said when they got backstage after that, I can't remember if it was Dash or Dawson, but one of them was just literally in tears because of the way it had been done, almost like it didn't matter who they were. And they said up until that point, Triple H had always protected them. And that was the night they felt really disrespected. And I think that everyone walked past them when they got to the backstage. The only guy that said thank you was Sean Waltman. But for everyone else, it was just a bit of a, you're just a nobody to us. And I think that was when the writing was on the wall. And what's fascinating with that is they said their biggest supporter in the whole thing that kept going to Vince McMahon every week by all accounts, and does it for a lot of these guys, was Randy Orton. Randy Orton's name got mentioned so much during this podcast. He was the guy that was saying, look, you need to have these guys in your, best positions. And Randy Orton, we know, John, for a little bit in this time, he was tweeting quite a few odd things at that time, certainly putting the feelers out, whether he was probably trying to just get a good deal from WWE. I never really saw him going to AEW, if I'm completely honest, but I'm sure he was trying to get a good deal. I think in terms of Adam Cole here, look, if I was his agent, there'd be two things I'd want to know quite clearly is Adam Cole, let's face it, if he goes Raw or SmackDown, even with the Undisputed Era behind him, they're not going to do nothing. I don't see them being any different to Sanity or all these other groups that we've seen have good runs. What's fascinating about, John, when I go back and look at NXT guys that have done well on the main roster, there's a bigger percentage in that I've looked at that those that don't have a great run on NXT seem to have a better run on the main roster.
Yeah.
Why that is, I don't know. But guys like Elias, who didn't have a terrific career on NXT, he got like loads of TV when he first got up there. He was made a big deal of. I can't remember all the other people that I wrote down, but there was more on that side of things than the likes of Bayley and Finn Balor that you think should just be household names as soon as they get it. I think for Adam Cole, look, unless they're going to make NXT a real third brand, then maybe AEW is the way to go. And I know that sounds a little bit odd, but I don't see them going, right, he's going to be our Shawn Michaels. I just don't see them doing that. I don't think they're going to look at Adam Cole as a guy that can be any more than a United States or Intercontinental champion at best, for me. What about you, John? Where do you think he's going to lie? And what would your advice be there?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, as an NXT diehard, I'd love to see him sign and stay with NXT for a bit longer. I agree with everything you're saying. If he got called up to Raw or SmackDown, I don't think either him or him as a package with Undisputed Era will be treated very well. I'd love them to be, to look at Adam Cole and think, yes, we've got the new Shawn Michaels. Let's kind of develop him. Let's kind of put him in these fantastic situations and let him flourish. But I honestly can't see them doing that. Although saying that, Adam Cole is around the same size as AJ Styles, and look at how successful AJ Styles has been on Raw and SmackDown. But I think, if I'm honest, if I have to search my heart, I have to kind of be honest and say Adam Cole would probably have a brighter future long term if he did go to an AEW, where they do tend to look after talented performers like an Adam Cole with a bit more respect. And you know, if we're all honest, I think that that's possibly the best future for Adam Cole, unless he was just to stay alive for on NXT.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, so very, very interesting. And like I say, the weeks and the months will kind of show us a lot more, but I kind of see him retaining last night as a good sign for fans of NXT and fans of Adam Cole being on NXT, and hopefully that's kind of a sign that, I think if he hadn't signed, there's a good chance, or a greater chance, that the title might have switched last night. But let's get on to our semi-main anyway. So it was Tomasso Ciampa versus Karrion Cross. Now, in my opinion, this was the match that had the best build of all the matches going into TakeOver. This was the match that I was most looking forward to, you could say. The entrance from Karrion Cross and Scarlett is the best in pro wrestling at the moment, certainly with the theme music, the black and white, Scarlett coming into the ring and singing the song. It's very kind of eerie and ominous, and I can't wait to see what it's like in front of an arena full of fans. That's going to be fantastic. In the match, though, it goes to the outside pretty soon, where Cross tosses Ciampa into the ring apron, appearing to whiplash Ciampa's surgically repaired neck. That looked a little bit worrying for a few seconds there. Cross puts on a display of impressive suplexes, easily manhandling Ciampa in the first 5 minutes. Ciampa comes back with a flurry of offense, getting a close near fall from a Willow's Bell. The match doesn't go too much longer, though. However, with like a modified F5 followed by a cross jacket sleeper hold, with the referee calling for the bell, Karrion Cross gets the relatively easy win there. So an impressive display from Cross, and after defeating one of NXT's biggest stars, it would seem that Karrion Cross is destined for big things. So as I mentioned earlier, Karrion Cross to me would be kind of a given for, you know, you could make excuses for Karrion Cross going straight up onto a Raw or SmackDown. I'm glad as an NXT fan that he's here with Scarlett to build a bit of a fan base on a different setting. But we've spoken about Johnny Gargano and Finn Balor. I'm going to throw Tomasso Ciampa into this. 3 characters that seem a little bit lost in the shuffle at the moment, seem to be more on the losing side of things than the winning side of things. Not necessarily in the case of Finn Balor tonight, but Tomasso Ciampa seems to be a little bit lost and seems to be in more of a role of putting others over at the moment. I felt this match, nothing wrong with it. I'm glad that it was quick. I'm glad that Karrion Cross won in a dominant fashion, and I think he does have a very, very bright future. And he's one of these bigger indie stars in terms of size and presence compared to the Garganos and the Tomasso Ciampas. So I see bright things ahead for Karrion Cross and definitely for Scarlett as well. Any thoughts on how this one went down?
Yeah, I enjoyed this. This was. I had in my notes, this is the recycled SummerSlam John Cena Brock Lesnar type put over here. You know, the rub that he got from Tomasso Ciampa, very dominant performance, and they certainly went out their way to make it look like that. As you say, I think with Karrion Cross, I mean, look, I would do the whole. I know everyone says, oh, you know, you can't keep doing that, but it's a formula that works, and it's the formula that you would have seen guys like Umaga. Braun Strowman when he got rebranded, Nia Jax had it as well, and it's just letting them basically showcase their stuff week to week. It works. I don't know why it still works, because it shouldn't. We should get bored of it. But when you see somebody, you know, displaying, showcasing all their good stuff in squash matches, it does work, and you hope after that. I mean, my goodness, they even had Ryback at one point at the top of the notch of his game. You know, They had Rusev do the same thing in a whole year. This stuff does work. Wins and losses do mean something if you protect the person. But the good thing about job matches is that most of the guys they can work against, if they bring in local enhancement guys, like, it's even better, because then you're not having to sort of put over any of your big names, and you're just showcasing the guy in the middle until the time is right to push the button. And 9 times out of 10, there's a lot of, you know, this guy might be our next big thing. And I know, Yeah, it's what happens after that that's disappointing, especially if you look at Rusev after John Cena at WrestleMania. It was certainly a nightmare, and we've seen it many a times. Umaga, when he had the match with Batista at WrestleMania, after that it sort of went a little bit flat. But it does work, that formula. So I kind of, with him, I could see the same thing. I think at NXT it's a little bit harder because there's not as many people down there, and you don't want to keep putting all over everybody, because otherwise he's just going to have to be champion very early on. And I don't think they need to do that right now. If anything, I would rather him not be an NXT champion and just kind of go to the main roster and let's see what he can do there. But yeah, I was very impressed with this. Very thought out, match. And so, like I say, Tomasso Ciampa, he knew going into this what the deal was, and certainly gave him the rub to make him look good. And yeah, it reminded me very much of the John Cena Lesnar match from SummerSlam, the way it was very much the clear-cut winner in all this. And yeah, I mean, he needs a little bit of polish here and there, but I think this guy, could be the guy. I mean, it's difficult, John, because who's the guy that came out then had all the business with Twitter, and then he had the injury? What was his name? Lars Sullivan.
Yeah. Poor Lars.
Yeah, he was probably going to get that run at some point on the roster. I'm pretty sure of it. But I don't know where he fits into plans now. But, you can only have so many of them. You don't want one on every brand type thing. There can only be one. So if done properly, I think he could, he's got the look, and he's got the character at the moment potentially to sort of be big things. I'm not saying he's gonna be the next Steve Austin here, but he certainly could be a player, and potentially have the opportunity to do some good things.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I will say, I think he is destined for gold on the NXT brand. I wouldn't mind see him being Keith Lee's next challenger for the North American Championship, kind of build him through the stages before potentially putting him up against whomever the NXT champion is in 6 months' time, 12 months' time. But yeah, very, very impressive with the way they're handling Karrion Cross at the moment. Haven't faulted a single thing they've done with him, but yeah, very, very good.
I can see him smashing through Finn Balor and Gargano, in the next, just the way they are at the moment with this stuff, because they just don't look like they've got anything for them. So, yeah, he could get some really big names. I just hope they do a good job of protecting him. I want to feel like wins and loss records, I know people say it don't matter anymore, but if they mention it enough, it does. So I hope that they continue with that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And it'll be interesting to see what they do with Tomasso Ciampa as well after this, because we know he's a great character, a very capable wrestler, but we can't have him lose too often. Let's talk about our main event then, John. So it was the for the NXT Women's Championship triple threat match. Charlotte Flair, the champion, going into it against former champion Rhea Ripley against Io Shirai. So this match was great as far as I was concerned. Charlotte Flair giving knife edge chops to both Rhea Ripley and Shirai, saying that this was her house. So I thought that she was fantastic in this whole match, to be honest with you. Then she launched Rhea Ripley hard into the plexiglass. That looked pretty painful. Shirai nails a Tiger Fate kick or a 619, and then a double foot stomp onto Charlotte Flair. There's a huge double spear onto both Shirai and Ripley from Flair. So action all over the place, 100 miles an hour. Flair gets a close near fall from a natural selection. The match goes to the outside where Io Shirai, she dives off of the roof of the In Your House set onto both opponents, with Charlotte Flair appearing to catch the worst of it. Ripley drops Flair with a riptide from the top turnbuckle. That's a pretty neat move. The end of the match happened when Flair has Ripley in a figure 4 or a figure 8, but Io Shirai comes off the top rope with a trademark moonsault onto Rhea Ripley, covered, got the pinfall, and Io Shirai is the new NXT Women's Champion. So very much deserved. I thought this was a great match. I absolutely loved Charlotte Flair. I thought she was the star of the match as far as I was concerned, to really kind of put the other two over. And in a scene straight out of a Stardom match, you could say Io Shirai was there celebrating her win, being bathed in streamers and confetti as the show went off the air. So, John, did you love this match as much as I love this match? I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, this is the best match of the night, and it was great because it was the last match. It was old school like that, That's how I remember it being, shall we say, you build and build the anticipation. And they did a good job with this. Ranello especially made the occasion even better for me. I'll say this much, and I would have summed this up at the end, but Mauro Ranello, he does bring more to this. I think without the fans especially, it's a shame they couldn't have had Mauro work on a little bit more, I would have said, over WrestleMania, because he would have made a lot of difference in the way he's so passionate about anything. The guy could sell anything, whereas I think we both come out of that, especially that Money in the Bank ending finale from Michael Cole, where he looked like he was snoozing at the end of it. I think Mauro Ranello might have given something a little bit more to it, but this was an incredible match. I'm not a massive fan of triple threats in general, I will say that much. I like it sometimes, just the old basic one-on-one, but I thought this was a good, solid match. Charlotte Flair, I'll go out and say this much right now. I said this a couple of years ago. I feel the same is again. I think she's the most consistent performer, male or female, WWE currently has. I think that she's, in terms of ticking the boxes on as much as possible. I'm not saying she's a 10 on all of them, but she's the most all-round varied talent they have in terms of the way she carries herself, the look, the style, the wrestling, the consistent matches, and her kind of, even though she's lost matches, her value, her stock value is very, very high, and
it never goes down, does it? It never
goes down. And I know people out there are a little, there's either people really love her or hate her, but I think a lot of the haters will always jump on the bandwagon that she's Ric Flair's daughter. But trust me, most wrestlers, even people I've interviewed that are second or third generation stars, it's harder sometimes, because if your father or mum was bigger, I mean, you think Ric Flair, to be honest with you, in most pure wrestling people's minds, he is the ultimate wrestler. And you're the daughter. There's a lot of pressure that comes with that, and it ain't a given. How many guys have we seen, John, like Ted DiBiase Jr., Curtis Axel? We've seen
just about all of them.
Yeah, they don't always work out. I would say there's more percentage on the low end of it working out. I know we've got Rock and Randy Orton, but they're the exceptions sometimes. So there are that, and trust me, I think Charlotte, I think she's had it harder to get up there having that tag, but she's great. Her character, the arrogant side of it, she's brilliant. She to me, when I'm listening to her, I see her. I don't see her playing the character. I see her as one person, and that's when you're doing a good job with your character and delivering the lines, because she doesn't come across as somebody who, I know I've spoken about it a few times, but you look at Bayley, where I see her just playing the character very much so. With Charlotte, this is a great package. It's fantastic to have her on an NXT. This is the kind of thing, when she beat Rhea Ripley, this is the kind of moment we would have wanted down the line. I didn't think it would come this soon, however, but this is what you'd want someone like Charlotte Flair down there for. Rhea Ripley, again, sky's the limit with her as well. I do see potentially another match between her and Charlotte before this ends. I know there's a lot of speculation that Rhea's on her way elsewhere. I don't see that as much. I still think there'll be another match between her and Charlotte. And for Shirai, I mean, to win this, to have the title, big moment, great ending to the show. But not a lot you can really say that was a negative on this. I thought they pretty much hit the spots on everything. It was cool that they used the In Your House set again. And,
love that. Absolutely love that.
Yeah, Charlotte did get most of the brunt on that one, as you said. And it was a good finish. It wasn't too long either. I mean, I'm sure backstage they could have said, "Oh, this needs to be a half-hour type thing." It's the triple threat, multiple people. They tend to do that, but this is the right kind of time. Sometimes timing in a match is everything, and you don't want to just have it there because you think it has to be drawn out and a slugfest. I think it's went just under 18 minutes. That's about right. You know, you don't want to keep going for.
And it didn't seem that long, John.
Matches.
It didn't seem 18 minutes. I would have said if you would have asked me maybe 10, but 18 minutes is longer than I thought it went. And that's just testament to how good the action was and how captivating the three wrestlers were.
Sure. Yeah. So overall, fantastic match of the night. Probably one of the best I've seen in a while in this whole sort of lockdown era, shall we say. This is definitely up there.
It totally delivered with no fans, didn't it? It totally delivered.
Absolutely.
But I mean, that's your match of the night. I think, before I started speaking to you, I probably would have given the edge to Finn Balor, Damien Priest. Really enjoyed that. But now that I've kind of listened to your opinion and thought the match through again and kind of gone through some of the high spots, I think, the main event was probably my match of the night as well. But I really enjoyed this. Definitely not the best takeover we've ever seen because we've seen many that have been just jaw dropping from beginning to end. The card on this one was stacked on paper. It looked like a fantastic card. Most of the matches delivered really, really well. I agree with your sentiments on the backlot brawl. It just didn't quite do it for me either. I'm just glad that the right person won at the ends, and a bit of a rebuilding kind of for the Velveteen Dream there. Keeping the momentum on Adam Cole, of course. It'll be interesting to see where his future lies. But all in all, a really, really good show. And I think, the match that disappointed me the most was Keith Lee versus Johnny Gargano. Had they have kind of shied away from all the, chicken shit stuff and the heel shenanigans and the weapons. I know it was a big man, little man match. And, in a straight fight, you'd probably pick Keith Lee all day long. But I think if they had just a pro wrestling match between the two, it would have been, a fantastic spectacle for sure. But what's your kind of overall thoughts on TakeOver in your house from last night then, John?
I think the sum up for me, 2 words, was comfortable viewing. This has been the first event in any Raw, SmackDowns, whatever. This has been the first one where I've actually sat down, put it on, and because of the atmosphere that they've created, because of the way they shot it, it was much more easier viewing for me, I tell you. And if you get me engaged in that way, then listen, it wasn't by the best wrestling show they've had this in this lockdown period. There's no doubt. WrestleMania does have those matches, but because there's no crowd and everything else, man, it's just not the same for me. And I put this above WrestleMania and Money in the Bank just simply because of the atmosphere that they created was so much better. And I said going into this, I didn't have much investment in the matches going into this. I really didn't. But watching this show, the way they delivered it was perfect. Mauro Ranallo made a lot of difference to it as well. And like I say, having that blacked out, not seeing the walls and that bloody fan that I see all the time spinning round at the top, which just really takes me out of everything. It does make a lot of difference. I'm surprised they didn't try this a lot sooner because Triple H has always done that with the NXT takeovers. He always darkens everything out. You'd never know if you was in a 60,000 arena because of the way they do it. But it's an old school thing, and it does look good. There is something about it where instead of like having your focus drawn away from other things, everything is about the match. And sometimes you need that because there is so much distraction now in WWE with the entrance, the lighting, everything else. Sometimes it's just nice to not be over sensitized to all these flashing things and LED screens and just have it about the 2 or 3 or whatever the talent themselves. They are the main focus of the show, and that stands out a lot more for me. One thing I did want to ask you, John, the props and everything, like the in your house stuff, I would love to get my hands on that, wherever the warehouse is. And I've heard Bruce Pritchard talk about it. He said it's like Aladdin's cave.
Yeah, so you got the Hell in a Cell cage there. You got ladders that you use in matches and all sorts.
I think that would be like my ultimate sort of dream come true to have.
They should open it up. Yeah, I'd pay to go walk around
and look around. Imagine the amount of props and everything that they use, because they obviously do store it everywhere. They didn't just make those. I'm sure. I know that the ring aprons and stuff like that would have had to be, because it would have been the old WWF stuff. But all that stuff, Bruce Pritchard said, is all kept in some gigantic warehouse somewhere.
Exactly.
And apparently, when you're high up there, like Bruce Pritchard, you are allowed to take, I think it's one item at a certain point. I don't know what he chose now, but I know he has, because he was like quite a big proponent of Kane and the whole mask. I know
mask,
he's got
of
one
course.
of the first originals, but yeah, I would love to have that. That would be my sort of ultimate access experience, I think, to get round there and just literally dive in.
Yeah, or just imagine if they sold tickets to have a walk around there. That'd be fantastic. That would be good. That would be good. But John, it's been an absolute blast going through Takeover in your house with you. I really appreciate you helping us out with yet another episode. You are becoming a bit of a regular on the Wrestling with Johners podcast, so I do appreciate it. But where can my listeners kind of reach out to you, say hi, get to learn more about you and your fantastic content, and just start chatting with John Scott times 2.
Yeah, you can find me. The best place to find me right now is Instagram, which is John_Scott_podcast. It's pretty easy to find me, and I literally post as much up that I'm going to be doing. My podcast at the moment is it's not just wrestling. I'm kind of diving into other fields as well. We've had some actors on recently. We've had some martial artists people on. I've had a rugby coach on. I mean, very, very variety feel at the moment. Again, I do have, of course, the wrestling talent on as well. I've got a few ones coming up in the coming weeks, but that's a good place to find me. But other than that, you can now find me on turnbuckletv.com. Just go over there and you'll see some of the latest content that I'll be putting out. It's probably the best place to find me. But thank you again, John, for having me on as well.
No, it's been an absolute blast. So hopefully we can do this again fairly soon. But there we go. Please keep it tuned to the Wrestling with Johners podcast. If you've enjoyed this, as I always say, don't forget to press follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us on, so you can be notified every time a new episode drops. We're really trying to build our kind of subscription base on YouTube. So if you listen to us on YouTube, please press the subscribe and the notification button so you can get the notification every time we drop a new episode on YouTube, including a lot of my Turnbuckle TV interviews, which are dropping there, kind of face-to-face kind of interviews there with the likes of Forrest Hayes, Mad Dog Angus, the Elliot Jordan Experience, and so many more. So thanks again to John for coming on the Wrestling with John's podcast. Thank you to everybody for listening, and we'll catch up with you all again soon.